Hello, Gaston County. Welcome to episode number 120 of Gaston's Great, a podcast highlighting some of the great things happening in and around Gaston County. I'm your host, Stephen Long, and we are coming to you once again from the international headquarters this week, not worldwide headquarters, Naomi, it's international this week, of GSM Services. We simply believe in discussing more of the reasons why Gaston's great. We are highlighting another great organization this week as we highlight Family Life Ministry. We have AJ and Bria Main with us today. AJ and Bria are the Gaston and surrounding area field directors for Family Life Ministry. AJ and Bria, it's great to have you on, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
And full disclosure, AJ and I go back a few years. It's 2024. Gosh, we go back to 1982 or 3?
83.
Gosh, that's when we started Greer Junior High. So we were in middle school and high school before you were born. That's right. So, as usual, we're going to get right to it before I embarrass myself more. So, something we'd like to do at the beginning before we get into, Family Life Ministry, just if you don't mind, this question is for both of you. And maybe just start with you, AJ. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and anything that you'd like to share for our listeners.
Well, I'm a Gaston County native. Pretty much lived here my whole life, outside of 2 years of going to college and then returning back to graduate from Belmont Abbey College. And so I went to Ashbrook High School. And,
the great class of 1988.
Great class of 1988. And like I said, graduated from Belmont Abbey and played a little baseball there. And,
that's right. I forgot about that. You sure did.
Married Bria 21 years ago. And we have 5 beautiful kids because of her.
Very good. So, Bria, anything you'd like to share? Anything you can do to top anything he says today, I would appreciate.
Not really. I grew up all over the place, born in Kansas, moved a lot, but then settled down at Pembroke for college and then have been here for 22 years.
Okay. So. And just, again, also for the record, AJ is better for it.
Yes.
Without
100%.
Without question. So this is obviously the big question, right? So we're going to get into the details of Family Life Ministry. So maybe let's first, before we get, how did you guys get involved? Tell me a little bit of history of your involvement with ministry, because the Family Life Ministry wasn't your first, my lack of vocabulary, your first endeavor into ministry, okay? So, and then how did that evolve into both of you getting involved with Family Life Ministry? And I should have told you this before we started, but I'll throw a question that's typical for both of you, and y'all can just talk over him. And when, like I said beforehand, when he doesn't say something right, please feel free to correct him as quickly as possible.
Well, I'd been on staff at 2 different churches for 22 years. Okay. Started as a youth pastor at Calvary Baptist Church, and then transitioned to South Point Baptist Church after 6.5 years, and was youth pastor there for 8 years. And then during that time, Bria and I both working in the ministry together, really felt the transition that we wanted to be impacting families, not just students, just kind of the whole family. So my last 8 years at South Point, I was a Family Life discipleship pastor.
Okay. So for the novice who might not know, what does that mean specifically? I mean,
transitioning
as somebody who grew up in a church, I'm familiar with some of those concepts and some of those types of positions, but somebody who may not go to church or may not understand, what does that mean specifically?
So from a student ministry standpoint, it was just hanging out with students, encouraging students, teaching students Scripture, just trying to help them build a wholeness understanding of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And then transitioning into family, it was more or less teaching marriage classes and teaching some parenting classes. There's some mandates in Scripture that teach us as parents to teach these things to our kids, and so we just wanted to come along parents and do that with them.
And they're qualified because they have 12 kids. Is that right? Is it 12 now?
Yeah, we are qualified because of our
5,
kids now.
6 if you count AJ. But then we were doing a marriage class, and he was like, "Hey, why don't we try to find something for our married couples to go to after class?" And I already had looked at this weekend for us a year ago. So I was like, "Hey, I found something." So that's when we got to know Family Life. We went to their Weekend to Remember.
Okay.
And
all right. So where was that? I'm sorry.
I think in Asheville.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
All right. Great segue. So then let's get in. What is Family Life Ministry. What you kind of mentioned what brought you to it, but give us a quick story of what it is and how you realized, okay, this is really, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but it feels like a calling. I mean, I know you pretty well. Unfortunately for her, I don't know Bria as well. But let's kind of get into that if you can.
Well, Family Life Ministries is it's a ministry that really laser focused on marriages.
Okay.
And also parenting, families, just strengthening the family. And with my past, having been a part of a broken relationship, it fuels me to make sure that we can encourage families and encourage marriages, just trying to create healthiness there. And so that was some of the driving force of getting involved with it. And then, with the laser focus of, hey, let's get after it for marriages, that's been something that both of us have a real passion for, a real heart for. And Family Life comes alongside churches. One of our roles is to partner with churches and to help build strong marriage ministries and family ministries in churches. And so doing that through small groups and through curriculum that help teach some of the timeless truths from Scripture to help those families just kind of create healthiness. I think we all know families under attack in our culture today, and so
it feels like it sometimes. Yes,
and so being able to come alongside and just strengthen and encourage is something that we both really love to do. So,
and we know if you have a healthy marriage, you have healthy employees, you have a healthy community, and so we just want to be a part of helping families stay together and thrive.
Was there something specific though that happened when you made that jump from the traditional youth family position in a local church to this, what feels like a little broader, or is it just that tug you felt to do that you could make a bigger impact?
Well, we had several things on the table, several different paths we could have chosen for a different job. We felt like God just wanted us to go down each path and see if He opens the door. So Family Life was it, because we were ready to just stay at the church,
right?
But we felt like He opened that door and wanted us to.
And for me, it was the broader reach. Being on staff at a church, you're ministering to those people there.
Sure.
But being able to get out in the community and in the surrounding communities and really kind of just reach a greater mass of folks with the truth, because it is such a marriage is hard, and when you see that and you see the statistics that are out there, you really, if you want to make a difference, you can't confine it to one church. You really got to just be able to get out amongst the people, and that was the biggest thing for us.
So, Bria, you mentioned the strong marriage, right? And I will never forget when our son's 25 now. The very first time we took him to a pediatrician was Ellis Fisher, who was on a few episodes ago. But he was a good, very faithful man.
He was our pediatrician.
Yeah, and unfortunately our insurance changed, so he was only our pediatrician for a very short period of time. However, the very first time we took him, he looked at Janet and I, and the very advice he gave us on that first visit was, your marriage comes first. Mm-hmm. That's the best thing you can do for your children, is to show them, and so they can see, how that looks. And of course, at the time, I'm a terrified father, right? I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm worried about this kid, this little person now we're responsible for. But I here it is 25 plus years later, and I've never forgotten that. And so I appreciate you saying that. Does the organization have, you kind of went over it, AJ, does it have a specific mission or mission statement or something, or is it kind of just what you just explained?
Well, the mission statement is every home a godly home. Okay. And that's the focus, and that's going from a marriage conference heavy ministry to now wanting to expand that and put people on the ground to minister in communities where they're kind of planted, is kind of to carry out that mission. Every home a godly home.
Okay. Yeah, another tagline we have is reaching your corner of the world.
Oh, okay. So kind of wherever they are, right? Wherever wherever the family or issue or opportunity might be. Can you talk about some of, we talked a little bit before we started recording, but can you talk about some of the maybe specific initiatives or events or programs, again, from my ignorance of how they might be described. So how do you go about, how does Family Life Ministry and you guys go about serving these families and marriages, and just kind of anything you can, but either one of you can share there.
You want me to start? Well, one of the fun part about our position is we get to just kind of go where the Spirit leads and just come up with things. So one of the big things that we started 2 years ago was Come to the Table. We go down to the Little Raiders football program in Belmont, down to Davis Park. Yeah. And last year we did 7 weeks of it on a Tuesday night, and we would feed the people. So we just would bring out tables, bring out chairs, ask churches and other organizations like FCA to help us serve the people, and we just give them a free meal once a week. So we fed probably anywhere between 450 to 500 people, because parents have to, one parent has to be there, some of their siblings would come, and just trying to get people out back in their community. We want churches, FCA invited Belmont Abbey baseball team. They came helped us twice last year, and just want to get people into their community, see their community, and others to know that we're here for them.
So maybe a captive audience, right, that's already doing something together. And if for those of you who don't know, FCA is Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And I wish, if I was really good at podcasting, I would know what episode that was. But Austin was on, I bet it's been 1.5 years or longer now. But it was a great episode, and they're doing some good work. And that organization has touched my daughters through the sports they played at Forest View. So anyway, that's another great organization if you want to look back into that. So, all right, so that's a good local one. What about, is there anything else, any other initiatives, any other broader programs or anything that you want to talk about?
Weekend to Remember is it's a national conference. There's about 85 across the country that folks could go to, but it is a marriage conference that usually runs between 600 and 800 people that come to it, and we have, I guess you would say, professional speakers that come in and share truths on marriage, and deal with things like conflict resolution and intimacy and all kinds of different things that you would encounter in a marriage that possibly have some rough spots there. But they cover that through the weekend. It's a very powerful weekend, and it's really a catalytic event for us. Ours is in Concord, and that'll be in April this year. And what we do is we encourage folks to go be a part of that. We have another team that really helps put that on. And then as folks come out of there, we try to help them find a place to plug in, try to plug them into churches if they're not in a church, or we'll, see if they want to, start mentoring other couples. And so we try to mentor them so they can come out and mentor other couples in their corner of the world. And so just depends on where they're at.
Is it fair, in your experience, to say that oftentimes married couples, or before they get married, they're not having some of these discussions that they should have?
Absolutely.
Janet and I were fortunate. We had went to counseling with, it was her minister, the minister, Dr. Wyke, who performed our ceremony. But yeah, we went for, I don't know how many weeks, and he asked us some questions that, frankly, I didn't want to answer. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And questions that if I wasn't in that situation, I can imagine 12 months later, Jan and I are like, well, we didn't talk about this. So, and it's funny, when you were saying that it crossed my mind, because I'm wondering just how often that is exactly what happens. And whether it's money, kids, where to live, jobs, there's so many questions that, at the beginning, it's just, we love each other, let's get married, it's going to be great. Well, what about then? That if you're not careful, that can wear off, and then you get into the logistics of marriage. Right. I don't like that word, but it's kind of, that's what it is. So, I can imagine y'all see some of that things that aren't talked about, right?
Right. And one of the things that is big on that is when you don't know the answer, or you are in a conflict, or you are busy from jobs and kids and things like that. One of the things that our ministry likes to focus on is that you end up in isolation because you're so busy, you're not communicating, you're not connecting. And then so we really try with all of our materials, the conferences we do, the mentoring we do, is try to take people from isolation to oneness and get back to where they're connecting in that oneness. That was originally planned by God, obviously, when you got married, and then to impact. And that's another thing for us is if we can go isolation to oneness to impact, then we have healthy marriages that are making a difference in their community.
Okay, so that's I mean, just explain something that's so big, but it sounds so simple, but it's not. Simple and easy are two different things, right?
Right.
Simple concepts, but they're not easy to, get couples to even talk about or think about. So I understand we talked a little bit before we started recording that you're roughly you've been got this specific for 4 or 5 years now.
Yes.
Can you have any anecdotal stories, or obviously without sharing any names or specifics of an example of a man that you feel like, or something you've seen, man, we really made a difference. We really made an impact on that family. Anything that comes to mind?
Quite a few families that we've mentored, and whether before marriage, kind of doing some mentoring before they got married, and afterwards, we hear from them quite a few. This really helped us. You helped us learn how to navigate conflict, and also we did some mentoring and some partnering with a church in town, and recently we just got an email from the pastor of that church that one of the couples that was in our classes and our mentoring is now taking over their marriage ministry. And so that's one of the keys that when we go into a church, we want to train couples to mentor couples in their church. And you're seeing that happen. That's
how the exponential impact occurs, right? Yeah, is when you can, ultimately that's the goal of any type of leadership, whether it's ministry, whether it's what we do here at GSM, whether it's stuff I do in the community. If it's the same people over and over just doing the same thing, then the impact is just not as broad, right? You don't get to see that impact overall.
Yeah, and our come to the table, we've now, this last year, was it Stanley? Mm-hmm. Stanley is now looking at trying to implement that in their area. So we're going to have some meetings with them to try to get them to be able to do a come to the table.
Is it mostly, how do you get connected with people? Is it mostly other people telling others about you guys? Is it something that the broader organization helps you with? I mean, how do people get connected?
It's pretty much us showing up, being present.
Okay.
And whether it's at a church or in a community, it's just showing up and saying, hey, we're here to serve, we're here to help, and just kind of build it. So we've kind of been given the papers to go build this thing. So we're it's a lot of fun because we can help places like Crisis Pregnancy Center. We've taught some continuing education with the foster care community.
Yeah, I saw some of those things.
So there's a lot of things that we can do. Anything that has to do with marriage or family, we can kind of step into. And so it's really just that's an entrepreneur, I guess.
We had least of these Carolinas on as well, and man, that foster care system is just overloaded, isn't it? I mean, it's hard to, for lack of a better description, my sheltered life growing up is just, I had no concept of that, right, until I've gotten involved in the community and see really what's going on. It's almost like that ignorance is bliss, right, about the things you don't know about. Bria, what about you? Would you, in the 4 or 5 years that you guys have been doing this, there's something that stands out that you're most proud of accomplishing? Something that's like, wow, I'm glad that we did that. You notice I skipped AJ immediately on purpose on that question.
I'm trying to think. I mean, I know we've talked about it, but the come to the table has been much fun. I just, I asked the Lord to just give me one lady to connect with each week.
Okay.
And it was neat to meet different ladies or grandparents that are bringing their kids and staying for them, and just connecting. And we've connected with one of the lead people at the Red Raiders, and they're getting involved with our ministry and then with the Belmont Abbey baseball team. And
what Naomi's probably heard me say this on podcast episodes, because we have had a lot of faith-based. I'm a Christian, so we're not afraid to talk about these things. And what I know about both of you and what I admire about both of you is what you just said, right? You're asking to be connected with somebody, right? You're asking for that. Now, the difference between my experience with most people, and including myself, is you actually, or you have the faith and you're looking for that person. See, I'll ask that question. I'm like, oh God, please nobody come, I might have to do something.
Well, the neat part too, like God doesn't always want to add to our day. A lot of times He just wants to use what you're already doing. So that's what's fun too.
Yeah. Well, somewhere along the line too, when I started getting involved in the community, and it wasn't just really involved with First Methodist Church. We're still members. We're the connection though. We got to get ready to shift our connection because we're about to be done with the youth program. That's kind of been. So now we got to find a new path, so to speak. Janet and I will there. But what I discovered, I was looking for this big stuff to do as an example to what you described. But I realized somewhere online that I've got access to 250 plus families here at GSM that I have an opportunity to impact every single day. And I realize that I'm out looking for something else. But to your point, what's in front of you, right? Maybe that was like God knocking on my head, Stephen, look around, dummy, So that's kind of, we do try to do some development stuff and spiritual stuff. Or maybe we do spiritual stuff but disguise it, so we don't, they might not know. Now, of course, it's probably pretty obvious that we're a Christian organization, isn't it? So, remember this is you guys have answered a bunch of questions that I had down the list already, so I'm not going to go there. But remember, this is a question. This is a podcast we do about Gaston County. Why Gaston County is such a great place? Why would you say Gaston County? And obviously, you're serving a little broader area, but we're focused on Gaston County. Why is Gaston County and the surrounding area better? Because of the organization and the work you guys are doing.
Well, I think that if the Lord allows us to continue to do this, the response that we've gotten from churches already, and from the partner with FCA and helping with coaches and their marriages, and I think Gaston County will be a lot better in the healthy marriage scene as well as healthy families, and that's our goal, is to Gaston County just have strong families and strong communities.
Yeah, even though I think there's how can I put this politically correctly? Not that I care much about being politically correct, but it's obvious if you can read data, read any information, it's obvious that communities are better off when there are strong families.
Yes.
And I'll leave it at that, right? And if somebody wants to skew some data or skew some information, to their liking, which I think happens sometimes. That's why it's such a big thing. That's why we wanted to talk to you, because I knew what you guys were doing. Bria, would you add anything to that, or did AJ for once actually cover something intelligently and clearly?
What we have found too, United States, the whole United States is, they'll spend a lot of money on youth programs, which is good. We need to reach the young. But 85% of churches spend nothing on marriage. And I just don't think. I think that's what our hope too is, just to get that word out of, hey, let's work on our marriages, so then they can pour into their kids as well with the youth program, and just getting that developed in Gaston County and beyond, just so people are aware that hey, we need to be proactive with these marriages and intentional, because life happens and we start to drift, and we just want
intentional is a good word, isn't it? Because to your point about being busy and life happens, is that, and next thing you know, it's 20 years later, and what does your family look like? What are your kids into? What are they about? And have you modeled? And then another hard lesson for me as a parent was realizing that they're paying more attention to my actions than what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. That was a tough one for me. I mean, to realize, but I learned it pretty quick, I think. Looking ahead, I mean, you just it was a good segue. You kind of mentioned what's in the future. We like to ask that classic question 5 to 10 years down the road, but I don't know. Things change so fast in our current world that I'm not sure. Like here at our business, we don't talk 5 or 10 years anymore. We used to. We talk more like 1 to 3 years now. It's just because things are changing so quickly. If you could go ahead, say 3 to 5 years, and look back and say, man, we did exactly what we wanted to do, what would that look like? Or are there plans that you guys have for the future?
Well, there's kind of a pattern that was created back in 2016 in Jacksonville, Florida. It's probably one of the worst places to be married at the time.
Really? Okay.
Divorce rate was really high, and families were struggling. And businesses, nonprofits like Family Life, and churches partnered together and said, we're going to take an initiative to really try to change this focus that's in Jacksonville. And over 2 years, They impacted over 50,000 families by just partnering together, doing classes, taking some initiatives to help families in the community. Kind of like the Come to the Table is just about us building relationships with people.
Right.
And they focus really on relationships and doing that. And they saw the divorce rate drop 24% in 2 years. And it was because it was, businesses were investing in the programs and churches were getting involved and partnering together. And so that's really our goal, is that, we'll get many churches, many businesses, and as many nonprofits that have the same likeness and wanting to really reach people for the gospel with the gospel, but also strengthen marriages and families so that we can do that as well. And so that's kind of a goal of ours.
So Jacksonville kind of a model or success, is that a fair way to put that? Definitely. I mean, 24% is not insignificant.
Right.
So, I mean, for the math people out there like me, sorry, that's 24 more people out of 100 that are staying together, right?
Right.
And how many kids does that impact? How many it's everything. It's where they work. It's just things they're involved with. I mean, so many other things are impacted. Would you add anything to that, Bria, or did I got to start asking you first to get better answers.
Well, Charlotte, we just partnered with Charlotte Marriage Initiative.
Okay.
Also, so they're just started like a year and a half, 2 years ago maybe, and so that's something exciting. And some people in Gaston County are coming over to that too, and just that's part of helping group together and make a change for the area. So, how do you?
I mean, this is probably not an unfair question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. How do you look back and how do you measure success? Is it just statistics? Is it just you see the stories you shared, about people that you get feedback? I mean, how do you know or feel like, gosh, we are making an impact?
I think like what AJ was saying before, if the people we've poured into now start pouring into others, that's when okay, it's going somewhere and it's not just stopping with them. You can go to church and listen to a good sermon, but if you don't go do it, it doesn't affect a whole lot. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was, we joined our church, Alex was 25, so it was a year before. We changed churches because of the youth program. And a few years later, Jody Seymour, occasionally you have that sermon that just smacks you in the face, right? And that kind of led me on that path of community involvement. And there's more out there, right? There's more for me to do than get up and come to GSM and be married. And it was right before we had kids. So, I mean, so maybe God was speaking to me, but I was so oblivious then. I was just Jody talking, right? Yeah. I wasn't self-aware enough to realize that maybe there was a bigger plan for me. Now I would probably pay more attention to that. So, I see you've brought like 12 pages of notes there, AJ. Is there anything that I haven't asked that I should have asked? I want to make sure you're covered because, we're getting ready to get into these local questions that are super important.
No, I think we've covered it.
All right. So before we finish, obviously, we'll make sure that our listeners know how to find more information out, how to get in touch with you, how to get connected. If there's a church out there that might spark something that say, man, we need this, we'll make sure that we do that. And a couple of things I want to make sure that we talk about too, some of the conferences that you guys, I think we may have touched on them, all of them, but we'll make sure we touch on that before we finish as well. So again, I appreciate you sending this. It was very, very helpful for my novice mind. But you guys, AJ being a lifelong Gastonian, and Bria, you've been here long enough in Gaston County. We have these questions, and we're going to call it, I make up a name every week, and this week we're going to call it, AJ, only a few other people will know the significance here. We were going to call this is going to be the Green Hornet speed round of questions. Okay? So, I'm going to start with your better half this time. So, Bria, what is your favorite Tony's ice cream flavor?
Cookies and cream.
That's not actually as common an answer as I would think, but that's a good answer. AJ?
Black cherry.
Black cherry. That's actually pretty common. So you're not. Her answer was better. Sundrop or cheer wine?
Sundrop, but Sundrop slushy.
Oh,
Cheer wine.
Have y'all been able to work that difference out there? And y'all's
That's one of our conflict resolutions.
favorite local restaurant?
Sake.
Oh yeah, that's pretty good. I have to admit.
I'd say Ray Nathan's.
That's definitely a man's answer right there. How about favorite outdoor activity in Gaston County or favorite park?
Pickleball.
Ooh.
Love some pickleball.
Where do y'all play that? Because you know what? I have to admit, I have never, Jan and I have not done that yet. We have not played.
Much fun.
Even our church, I think, does it once or twice a week.
Davis Park has two. We have two courts right there.
Wow.
We began playing it in the villages where it was probably originated.
In Florida.
Oh, wow.
His parents moved to the villages to retire, and so we went down there.
You fit right into the old people's home, didn't you, AJ?
Yeah. It was fun playing with people my age. But no, yeah.
So would you have a different answer, or would that be your answer as well?
Pickleball's it.
Okay.
It's a family thing now.
So that's where you've come together and agreed on something. Mm-hmm. That's good. All right, AJ, UNC Duke or NC State?
That's a short list.
Correct, on purpose.
I wrote down NC State.
But we will accept other answers in the right context, and then but
right,
as the host, I get to decide if it's acceptable or not.
Clemson baseball. How about that?
Give me something. That's some bad sound effect. That didn't really match the. All right, Bria.
NC State.
You just got applause, so that is the correct answer. And AJ knew the correct answer. He just did it on purpose. All right, Bria, what is something very few people know about you?
I am a twin. I have a twin brother.
Okay. Where is he located?
He is near Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Okay. Excellent.
I used to drive a Green Hornet.
That's true. A very small group of people who know that or remember that, and it survived a lot. Oh, goodness. How about a recent book, blog, article, or something material that you guys have, or something that you might share with listeners that might be worth them checking out?
Recently, it's a podcast, but
from
our Family Life Today show. But it was Kevin DeYoung, and he was talking about. Let me see these notes. Can't remember the title. But Kevin DeYoung, he's actually in Matthews, a pastor there. But Follow My Heart or Follow My Head.
That's the name of the podcast?
That was the title of, that particular one.
Oh, okay. What's the name of the podcast? Is it just...
Family Life Today.
Gotcha. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's great. I appreciate that because I'm always looking for another podcast to put in my queue that I'm not going to get to. All right. AJ, what about you?
Relationships Over Rules. David Hoffman.
That's a book or a podcast?
It's a book.
Okay. Relationship Over Rules?
Yes.
Cool. Any particular reason, something specific about it, or it just struck a chord with you?
My word for the year is relationship. And so somebody recommended that to me, and so it's a very good book.
Okay. Listen, I'm a big reader, so I'm always looking for something else to add to my, again, kind of like podcasts, my queue of books that Janice's like, why do you have so many books here you haven't read at our house? I appreciate you indulging. We got a couple more questions, but I appreciate you indulging us on those Gaston County questions. And as I expected, Bria had the best answers. So again, kind of remembering this is about Gaston County. So Bria, I'll let you answer this one first. So AJ will have to follow you. Why, besides Family Life Ministry and the work you guys are doing, why would you say Gaston County is such a great place?
Well, the people have been always so welcoming and inviting, and just easy to get involved and fit in.
All right, I agree. We are very fortunate where we are. Mm-hmm. Mr. Main.
She took my answer.
That's why I asked her first.
Yeah, just the people, just the relationships that, for me, that I've had for years. To me, it's just special.
Well, I appreciate that. So, listen, AJ and I both been here a long time. We both have spent a little bit of time away, but I'm a total homer, right, for Gaston County. But I just think there's something about Gaston County and the people and the relationships and our view. It's just, and I think it's actually gotten better over the years personally. as well. So one more big question, and AJ, I know you have a lot more time period to think about this one than Bria does, but what advice would you give your 20-year-old self, knowing what you know now?
Invest in.
I was around you some when you were 20, by the way. So
just invest in people. Just have that mindset of just constantly being able to invest in people. Just encouraging and just kind of building those relationships and going deeper than surface.
And that's an interesting word to use about people in relationships. I don't think most people would use that type of word. So, but knowing you, I can see what you mean by that. So, and I appreciate you elaborating, because I was going to ask you to elaborate on that a little bit, because we do have, it's a lot of surface relationships, isn't it? It's a lot of, I don't know how to describe that, but luckily I got involved with a group called F3 that, that reminds me. Do you remember, what is your F3 name? F3?
Righteous Fox.
Is that right? Okay. I couldn't remember that. Yeah, I can't remember it because, I haven't heard it in a long time or seen you out there in a long time. So anyway, boy, I went down a rabbit hole there. Sorry. But yeah, so yeah, getting deeper with relationship. But like as an example, F3 has helped me with that. With some, like I just ran a relay race with 3 of the guys, and I trust them with anything and everything, and they know as much about me as you knew about me back in the day, right? I mean, it's and so that I appreciate you sharing that. Bria, what about you? What advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Just, no matter what age, just be willing to learn, be willing to put yourself around others that can help you grow.
So, gosh, yeah, when I was 20, I sure wasn't looking for mentors, right? I wasn't looking for.
I think you know everything.
Yeah, I wasn't looking for those who were, they're just old. They don't know what they're talking about. But gosh, yeah, if I had done some of that sooner, yeah, I probably didn't start that till, frankly, mid-30s when I really realized that, I got a lot to learn, dummy. And I had missed a few people probably that I could have taken something from earlier. So yeah, the things that seem important when you're 20 might not be so important. So again, listen, I appreciate that, because I say this every week too. I think that's my favorite question. So I appreciate you, your willingness to share that. So obviously, before we finish up here, where can listeners go to learn more about the organization, connect with you? I see some of these, you mentioned conferences and small groups and stuff on some of the stuff that you sent us beforehand. So just I want to make sure any listeners out there, any church members out there that might think this is some way to connect or something that might help, or they know somebody that might be struggling with something, related to their marriage or relationship. Just anything and everything you can share there.
Well, our website, our national website, familylife.org, has a ton of resources, and it has a ton of
.com.
Sorry. .com? No, I said .org, sorry. .com. It has a ton of resources and a ton of things that people can go to and get help from. Our podcast that they do, they're on there that day. And so if somebody misses a podcast or hears of a good podcast, they can always go. They're online always. As far as locally, we have a Family Life Charlotte Facebook. And so people can kind of see us there. Our personal Facebooks, they can look us up there as well. But yeah, as far as the conferences and stuff, we do them for anybody. We'll do them for just the community. We'll do them with churches. We just finished one at Walnut Grove this past weekend, did a vertical marriage conference, and I'm doing a men's conference this weekend at Sunset Forest. And so anything like that, we're willing to come into any of the churches. And so obviously if a church is seeing this and wants some information, then they can just reach out to us that way.
All right. Did he cover that pretty well, or did he?
Emails or not?
Yeah, I mean, we have emails and stuff like that. Sometimes that's hard, I guess, to promote here.
No.
Okay.
So we can put it. We can put it in the show notes as well.
Okay, we'll give you that. Put it in the show notes.
Okay. So, gosh, this is what you get with me. I was getting ready to ask you something, and it's gone.
Sorry.
I need some garlic. Was it garlic that helps you with memory?
What about finances?
No, I ignore that. Gosh, I can't believe it. There was something, of course, it seemed important at the time. Seemed like a good question, but apparently it wasn't that important. Any last words? Anything before we close this episode out? Any last words or anything you'd like to make sure our listeners hear before we finish up this episode?
Just say that we're here. We're
Okay.
here to serve and here to help, and just to strengthen families any way we can do that.
All right. Well, listen, occasionally I'll take a little personal moment to, I know both of you. I know actually that's not true. I know your heart, your intent. This is not some facade you guys are putting on, because this is the real deal. I mean, you guys are, the work you were doing is the real deal for the right reasons, and that's one reason that I wanted to have you guys on, just because we don't really know either what kind of impact are we making with this podcast, but I do know if we do 500 episodes and you guys were able to help one family from somebody listening to this, then it's worth us doing all 500 of those episodes, you know? So, again, I appreciate the work you're doing. It is the type of stuff that is, I view it as a calling, stuff that I probably don't have the fortitude for personally. So, again, I'm just grateful that our community has individuals in couples like you guys who are doing the work on the ground to make a difference. So,
Thank you.
I appreciate that, and you're able to do it in spite of your partner.
I know.
Yeah, you're hamstrung there. I'm getting ready to pull my headphones out. So, I typically do, not typically, I do a book recommendation and a thought for the week, and I was intentional this week. And there's a book by, I think I've actually, this is probably a repeat, but man, I probably shared this one way early in our podcast lives here, but there's a book by Gary Chapman called The 5 Love Languages. It's probably not for everybody, but I'm a big fan of it. I learned a lot from reading it and discovered that I was wrong on some of my assumptions before reading that and applying it. And I even took the little test so you can learn about yourself and your spouse or anybody that you care about. So I would encourage you to read that book. And I was intentional too about my quote for this week. And Janet will probably be happy to hear this one because this is from Audrey Hepburn. She's a huge Hepburn fan. But she said, the best thing to hold on to in life is each other. And man, we could a lot of things could be better if we just focus on our relationships. And it's worth the battle when there's something going on, right? You know, I think we live in this, throwaway society, so to speak. I mean, that's a bad analogy for marriages, but it does seem like the first sign of trouble, let's cut and run, right? And you made a great point, simple statement that said marriage is hard. Yeah. It's worthwhile, so it's kind of supposed to be hard maybe, and it's not supposed to be easy all the time. So kind of like work, right? Except here, it's just great all the time. So, to our listeners out there, thanks so much for taking the time to listen to today's episode. Please continue to spread the word if you can about the podcast. And please don't hesitate to contact us here at our email address, which is podcast@gastonsgreat.com. We're always looking for suggestions for future podcast topics and guests. You can find the podcast and subscribe at the website, gastonsgreat.com. And find the podcast anywhere you listen. You find social media. Anywhere you find podcasts. Boy. Naomi, can you edit this part out? Gee whiz. So, probably because of the ending, they probably don't get a good 5-star rating, but because of AJ and Bria, please give us a 5-star rating because they were terrific. And thanks again to both of them for being our guests today. What a disaster ending I just created. Gaston's Great is produced and brought to you by Naomi Hunt and Amy Anderson from GSM Services. I'm your host, Stephen Long, maybe for the future. Thanks again for hanging out with us, and please keep coming back to hear more reasons why Gaston's great.